The Golden State Warriors are winning the 2025 NBA championship, and it's all because they've gone full bully ball. Since the All-Star break, this team stopped leaning only on threes. It has overpowered opponents, crushed them on both ends, and left teams broken before the fourth quarter even starts. This isn't the finesse-heavy Warriors the league expects. Jimmy Butler shifted the identity the second he arrived, but the transformation runs deeper than him alone. The Warriors locked into the perfect formula championship experience, younger talent stepping up, and a physical edge they never leaned on before. So how did a team barely chasing a play-in spot turn into the biggest championship threat in the NBA? What flipped after the All-Star break? And why does this version of the Warriors bring a level of nastiness the dynasty never showed? The Golden State Warriors entered the All-Star break with a glaring issue. They lacked a reliable secondary initiator who could create shots without constant screens or scripted actions. That gap forced Steph Curry into heavy usage every night, which eventually limited the offense whenever defenses overloaded on him. Jimmy Butler's arrival erased that weakness immediately. He's excellent in reading defenses without set plays, so it didn't take him much to adapt to the Warriors' system super quick. His off-ball instincts allowed him to find open lanes without slowing the flow. When actions broke down, Butler's creating off the dribble approach gave the offense a dependable fallback option, which wasn't there earlier in the year. On defense, Butler's impact extended beyond his own matchups. His presence raised accountability across the roster. Before the break, Golden State's perimeter rotations regularly broke down against more physical teams. Since Butler's first game, those breakdowns have dropped sharply. According to analysts, Butler's fearless acceptance of the most daunting defensive challenges, paired with his battlefield-like communication, transformed the entire unit's defensive consciousness. Many claim that Butler sparked a near-supernatural defensive awareness in his teammates that opponents quickly learned to fear. Golden State started the season outside the top 15 in defensive rating. In games Butler has played since the break, the team ranked inside the top 5, and this improvement is directly tied to Butler's influence at the point of attack, say experts. When Curry rests, Butler controls tempo in ways this roster never managed before. Instead of leaning on hurried sets or quick handoffs, Butler slows possessions down, hunts mismatches, and forces contact to get to the line. The Warriors' bench minutes have flipped from a liability to a strength, largely because Butler's deliberate approach forces second units into physical defensive possessions they usually avoid. Beyond tactics, Butler's arrival changed the team's overall demeanor. Draymond Green has long been the emotional engine, but Butler added a different type of edge, less explosive, more unabated. Teammates have described it as a constant presence that keeps everyone locked in from warm-ups through the final buzzer. Klay Thompson, known for his laid-back personality, admitted Butler's no-nonsense preparation sharpened focus across the locker room. Butler's fit with Curry, Green, and Thompson was quick, probably because his impact doesn't depend on high usage. Entire possessions go by where Butler's role focuses on setting ghost screens, dragging defenders into awkward spots, or holding ground in mismatches to trigger better off-ball cuts, all without demanding the ball. On March 2nd against Denver, Butler scored 17 points, grabbed 9 rebounds, and held Jamal Murray to 5 for 16 shooting. That night, Golden State held Denver to 98 points, their lowest total of the season at the time. Since the All-Star break, Steph Curry has led Golden State's offense with a balance of efficiency and aggression no other player in the league has matched. Across those games, Curry has averaged 28.6 points, shot 46% from the field, and hit over 42% from three. What sets this stretch apart isn't the raw production. Curry has hit these marks before, but the adaptability in each game. When defenders sell out on his off-ball movement, Curry shifts into on-ball mode. He slices through coverages with screens or rejects them altogether to finish at the rim. When teams attempt to blitz high screens, Curry willingly moves off the ball. Needless to say, he evidently trusts Jimmy Butler or Draymond Green to direct the offense temporarily. Curry's impact extends far beyond his own shots. His off-ball gravity forces teams to account for him even when he stands 35 feet from the basket. Defenders shade his way on every possession. This leaves shooters like Hield and Podziemski with extra space, an advantage Golden State rarely created before the break. Even when Curry struggles from the field, Golden State's offense leans on the constant threat of his movement. Defenses over-rotate, scramble out of position, and eventually leave openings that wouldn't exist without Curry's presence. That type of invisible impact has defined Curry's post-break stretch and turned routine possessions into defensive puzzles for opponents. Curry's leadership off the floor has drawn praise from teammates and coaches alike. Steve Kerr reflected how Curry's consistency in preparation, communication, and composure sets the standard inside the locker room. Multiple Warriors players, including Draymond Green and Klay Thompson, have publicly called Curry the team's emotional anchor during the most inconsistent parts of the season. Curry's durability over the last 2 months has also stood out. Through the first 15 games after the break, Curry appeared in every one. He averaged over 34 minutes per night without any reported injury setbacks. That reliability allowed Golden State to build continuity in its rotations, a luxury the team lacked through much of the first half of the season. And then there's the closing stretch, the part of the game where Curry's influence becomes impossible to ignore. In clutch situations defined by the NBA as the final 5 minutes of games within 5 points, Curry ranks top 5 in scoring since the break, what allows a 36-year-old guard to keep dominating late-game possessions against younger, longer defenders every single night. Before Jimmy Butler's arrival, Draymond Green operated without any consistent support structure in major areas. As the team's defensive anchor, primary communicator, emotional spark, and secondary playmaker, Green carried responsibilities across nearly every phase of the game, often at the cost of his own effectiveness. Since the All-Star break, Butler's presence has allowed Green to shed several of those overlapping duties. Butler is capable of guarding elite perimeter scorers and initiating offense when needed. Green returned to the role that elevated him into one of the league's most impactful defenders. He excels as a roaming disruptor who can anticipate actions before they develop, quarterback the backline, and close defensive gaps no other player sees in time. That shift led directly to one of Green's most under-discussed improvements, his discipline. Through the first 15 games after the break, Green picked up just 3 technical fouls. Compared to pre-break stretches where frustration boiled over regularly, the difference in composure has been clear across multiple matchups. Green's defensive chemistry formed really quick. The two alternate between switching assignments mid-possession and executing pre-planned traps, creating perimeter coverage that smothers ball handlers without opening exploitable passing lanes. During Golden State's March 5th win over Minnesota, Butler and Green combined for 7 steals while holding Anthony Edwards to 4 for 17 shooting. Kerr called this performance one of the most connected defensive efforts the team delivered all season. Offensively, Green's playmaking efficiency has benefited directly from Butler's off-ball movement and Buddy Hield's spot-up threat. With 2 reliable scoring outlets flanking Curry, Green's reads have simplified. It resulted in quicker decisions and cleaner passing angles. Post-break, Green's assist-to-turnover ratio sits at 3.8 to 1, the highest mark of any frontcourt player in the Western Conference over that span. Green's iconic handoff game with Curry remains the foundation of Golden State's half-court flow, but now it's surrounded by secondary threats capable of punishing overplays. When defenses load up on Curry, Green no longer searches for answers. The spacing and cutting around him already provide them. Before the All-Star break, Golden State ranked 22nd in bench scoring and hovered near the bottom third in three-point shooting from reserves. Second units lacked both reliable spacing and consistent shot creation, which forced starters to play heavier minutes just to stabilize leads. The arrival of Buddy Hield immediately shifted that balance. Hield's reputation as one of the league's quickest release shooters followed him into Golden State's system, but the real impact came from how opponents reacted to him. Defenders stopped sagging off weak-side shooters whenever Hield stood above the break, stretching to help defenders farther than they wanted. Playing with Steph Curry magnified Hield's impact even further. Curry's off-ball movement created constant shifts in defensive focus, leaving Hield with catch-and-shoot looks defenders couldn't contest in time. Hield averaged 5.8 three-point attempts per game post-break while shooting over 41% from deep, both ranking among the top 5 bench shooters league-wide. Defensive activity also trended upward. Hield earned praise from Steve Kerr for cleaner closeout angles and improved off-ball awareness since the break, which allowed Golden State to hide him less often in team coverage. Hield's eagerness to sprint into transition threes added an entirely new dimension to Golden State's secondary break. Opponents forced to account for Curry's trailing threes now have to cover both wings immediately, leaving either Hield or Curry free on nearly every break. Lineup flexibility also benefited. Hield's shooting kept spacing intact whether he played next to Curry, Jimmy Butler, or Brandon Podziemski. In three-guard lineups where Curry, Butler, and Hield share the floor, defenses collapsed under the weight of three elite shooters plus Butler's driving threat. What happens when a team already featuring the greatest shooter ever adds another perimeter weapon defenders can't afford to ignore? Brandon Podziemski entered the season as a promising rookie with clear flashes of skill, but those flashes rarely led to extended stretches of consistent minutes. Post-All-Star break, Podziemski made those minutes impossible to take away. Decision-making sharpened across every area. Early season possessions often stalled when Podziemski hesitated between shooting, driving, or moving the ball. Those delays faded post-break, where quicker reads and cleaner passing opened up easier looks for Golden State's offense. Defensively, Podziemski took on assignments well above his weight class. Willingness to guard bigger wings, particularly when Jimmy Butler rests, gave Golden State defensive flexibility it lacked earlier in the year. Podziemski's quick feet and strong base allowed him to absorb contact without ceding position, keeping him playable across multiple coverages. Attacking closeouts became another area of visible growth. Podziemski stopped settling for contested threes and instead used hard closeouts as triggers for drives. Confidence finishing through contact, especially against rotating bigs, turned him into a secondary scoring threat instead of a spot-up specialist. Guard rebounding also stood out. Podziemski ranked second among all NBA guards in contested rebounds per game post-break, a stat that directly ties into Golden State's increased defensive rebounding percentage. Playing with Butler and Draymond Green accelerated Podziemski's development even further. Defensive rotations tightened when Podziemski played the low man, because both veterans trusted him to execute switches without hesitation. According to insiders, that trust led directly to Podziemski closing multiple tight games, where his fearlessness handling high-pressure possessions earned Kerr's confidence in the closing lineup. If Golden State pulls this off, it won't just mean another ring for Curry. It will be the comeback story that rewrites everything critics said about this core being finished. Can Golden State turn this late-season surge into a championship run for the ages? Time will tell. Meanwhile, stay tuned and subscribe for more deep dives into the biggest stories shaping the NBA.